everyone, welcome back to the channel. My name's Nathan, I'm currently a medical student. Today we have an extra special treat because my fellow friend, classmate, and YouTube star Josh is joining me. And today we're going to be talking about reflections on the first year of medical school.
Thanks so much, Nathan. Thanks for having me and excited to share our story.
Alright, let's get to it. Alright, so the first topic we're going to talk about is how we dealt with COVID during the year and a virtual curriculum. So I guess in general with COVID, first of all, we had capacity limitations in the rooms, and whenever we came to campus, we had to fill out the symptom tracker and we're always wearing masks.
Yep, I definitely remember that, because you've probably all heard of social distancing, so that was still implemented in the classroom. But even in that case, it was very few number of people and everyone had to be monitored to prevent the spread of any symptoms.
Mm-hmm. But for the most part, the entire year was mostly all virtual. So, Josh, what were your thoughts about a virtual curriculum in med school?
Honestly, it was very difficult, but I was kind of surprised at how quickly they shifted to a virtual curriculum, because usually you associate being a doctor with seeing patients in person. But what was really fascinating to me is how they've shifted that to more telehealth visits for some students for ECMH.
Yeah, I think in terms of like science lectures, it was definitely fine to have those virtual lectures. But for small groups and those sorts of interactions, those dynamics, you really lack the benefits of an in-person environment, in my opinion.
For sure, there's definitely a technological barrier too. Just with teamwork activities, like you said, everyone's like on their own screens, people might be doing other stuff. It was kind of hard to focus for those long periods of hours where it's like a team-based case,
Yeah, sure. And this isn't necessarily specific to a virtual environment, but one thing about the curriculum that I really enjoyed was sort of the interdisciplinary approach that our school had by incorporating things like ethics, humanities, lifestyle medicine, healthcare equity. So it really gave us a multifaceted view of medicine that helped us think more about how we'll actually apply medicine in the future, rather than just zeroing in on the minutia of the science and medicine details.
Yeah, for sure. I totally agree with all of that. Because most people think medicine is just a purely scientific profession, but there's definitely people skills to it. There's ethical and legal issues as well. And despite being virtual, we were still able to deliver that information in its entirety. And sometimes when it's pre-recorded, I know I personally didn't mind being able to play those lectures at double speed just to save some time and get to do other stuff.
Yeah. All right, the next topic we're talking about is our clinical experiences during our first year. So I guess, Josh, we can start with ECMH, and that stands for Education Centered Medical Home.
Yeah, so it's something that's unique to a few schools. Not all schools get such early clinical exposure, but at least for us, it was kind of it was very interesting actually getting such early exposure, pretty much from week 2. We didn't really have the scientific knowledge yet, but we're still allowed to go in and see patients, which is really nice. And we were actually able to continue that weekly visit pretty much throughout the entire year. So that was something really consistent that we got to do, which I appreciated.
Yeah, for me personally, that was my favorite part of first year, because we get to take a part in actual patient care and interviewing the patient, performing physical exam, and then discussing treatment and plans with our preceptor. And then even after the visits, we get to take part in following up with patients, giving them phone calls. And so for me, it gave me a picture of some of the real reward in medicine, which is building these longitudinal relationships with patients.
Yeah, and I definitely learned stuff very early on before lectures even happened. Like I was in a pediatrics clinic, so I got to really work with kids, which I'd never really done before. So that was pretty fun. And taking physical exams with them, really interacting with them and the parents, so having multiple patients within a room and juggling those kinds of conversations, that's something you really learn by doing and not something from a book or from a video.
Yeah. Okay, next, Josh, what were your thoughts about some of our sim labs and ultrasound experiences?
Oh, those are really cool. So I'm going to mention 3 things really briefly. This one session we had was called Harvey, which was this dummy that can replicate heart sounds and breathing. And we were tested on like what those heart and lung sounds sound like, because those can be really important in clinic in differentiating systolic versus diastolic heart murmurs, for one thing. So that was really cool, one of my favorite experiences for sure. Another thing we had was called the simulation lab, where they have another dummy, but it's more comprehensive. It has like blood pressure as well. It has like I guess like an announcer, someone with a microphone speaking as if it's an actual patient, and you can administer like medications to fluctuate vitals, which is really cool. So it's like a real life case without, and this is the time to make mistakes with no serious repercussions because it's not a real person.
Yeah, I definitely concur with all that Josh said. The simulated sessions were really a cool way of being able to put yourself in a clinical environment and really put your knowledge to the test.
For sure. And then the third and last thing I'd like to talk about is the ultrasound experience. So I feel like a lot of us have known about it, know what it is, but to actually be able to do it ourselves and really interpret it, we actually were able to practice on each other, not like on our stomachs, but like on our wrists and muscles in the shoulders to see where those are, and really getting practice reading that during first year. So we only really start seeing patients surrounding the hospital all the time third year. So getting that early exposure with the ultrasound machine was really cool.
Yeah, and in my opinion, I think ultrasound can be a very powerful technique, especially because it's a non-invasive procedure and can give you a lot of information about what's going on inside the body.
Yeah, and no radiation and super cheap.
Yeah.
So doctor's best friend, especially the cardiologist.
Yeah. All right, social aspect of medical school. Yeah, Josh, what were your thoughts?
Honestly, it's really important to have a good balance of just work ethic, sleep, but also a social life, because it's kind of what keeps you sane. And all of your classmates are going through the same thing. So when you're in it together and really having that dialogue, it's really important to help keep you grounded. So at least in my experience, there was a couple of ways that Nathan and I were able to make friends. I think the one that we mutually share a lot is the college system. So there's about 160 students in our class, and we're split up into groups of 20. And that group of 20 is kind of the group that you have your small activities with. You share a college mentor who is usually an attending physician in a field who can offer you advice, just go out for fun, hang out, just really be there as like a pillar of support for you. So I think that was really important, just making my first group of friends, especially with the beginning being all virtual.
Yeah, I totally agree. The college system puts you right in with a more intimate group and really fosters the friendships right off the bat. Okay. Yeah, and another way that some students were able to make friends was through different clubs and organizations. Yeah, Josh, do you have any thoughts about those?
Yeah, no, Nathan's absolutely right. You're definitely not confined to the college system. That's just at the very beginning, and you meet with them pretty much on a bi-weekly basis. But medical school clubs and interest groups are a great way to get to know people who are either interested in the same field, have the same passion for certain types of social work. A couple of things that I was involved in was Chicago Street Med, which is a group where we go and give medical treatment to the homeless around Chicago, which was really cool.
Yeah, there's so many different organizations, and you're always able to start a new one. Like one of the new ones that was started this year was the Jugulars, a juggling club. There you go.
Yeah, that was great. It's literally just a club to juggle with, hang out, meets all the pillars of Feinberg's requirements. So.
But yeah, I'll be honest, the social aspect of medical school for me was definitely the most challenging this year, especially because of the pandemic and the virtual environment. But sort of my thoughts on this, are really apply to making friends in any situation. If you're intentional about it and reaching out to people and trying to meet up, grab coffee, hang out, do things, you will form these friendships. And medical school is filled with so many amazing people. And so I just really encourage you to get out there, be bold, have courage, and see what happens. You never know who you'll meet.
Honestly, that's some great advice. I actually didn't meet Nathan until about halfway through med school, so it can really happen at any point in time.
Yeah. Okay, Josh, next on the list here is study habits. So for a lot of students coming to medical school, they have to, re-figure out how they approach studying because there's a lot of information to cover.
It's not that it's difficult topics, though there definitely are. It's just the sheer volume of information that you've probably never experienced in college, or if you take any gap years working those 9 to 5 jobs. It's just really not the same in terms of volume. So you really have to reconsider your study habits as well as use outside resources that are definitely available to you, because some schools offer them for free, others offer discounts, so you really have to take advantage of what's available to you.
Mhm. Yeah, and you really want to focus on efficient and effective study methods. And some really powerful ones are self-testing, so testing your knowledge, and then spaced repetition. And those two things are combined very elegantly in a program called Anki. And this is a flashcard app that a lot of students use, and you're able to test yourself with the flashcards, but also have them appear at spaced intervals.
Yeah, it's a pretty great software. Obviously, it doesn't work for everyone. There's no one-size-fits-all study method, but it definitely helps with working against the forgetting curve, because if you don't repeat information every now and then, you will forget it.
And so that's why our group me about studying for our medical school, we actually call it beating the forgetting curve.
We actually do. And
Yeah.
med school is actually a really collaborative environment, because at least for our school, it's pass-fail for the first 2 years. So it's actually in everyone's best interest to work together, to share resources, study together, take practice tests as often as you can, really to get a sense of the topic.
Yeah. And I guess I'll mention some of the external resources. Our school, Feinberg, they have really good lectures that really help us to learn the material, and our lectures are fantastic. But sometimes it's helpful to have some outside resources to supplement what you're learning and get a different perspective. So some of these resources are called Boards and Beyond, Pathoma, Sketchy. I personally really enjoy Sketchy. I think they're pretty entertaining. They essentially create a memory palace scene and then describe, all of the pharmacology or microbiology within this certain sketch. So I made a few videos like that on my channel before.
He definitely has. You should go check him out. The links are here. For those of you that aren't the most visual learners like me, there are other resources such as Boards and Beyond, as he mentioned, and as well as Amboss. Boards and Beyond does a really good job of highlighting the really high yield topics, so it might not be as in depth, but like Nathan said, your lecturers are a core foundation, but it is important to have supplemental resources to really broaden your knowledge in preparation for step 1, really just all your module exams, and step 2 as well.
So next we're going to talk about mapping out your career in medicine. So this is one of the great things about medicine, is that there's so many different avenues you can go after you graduate. So first, I guess one great resource to explore is your college mentor. We mentioned that before, but your mentor is really a go-to person to have these conversations with. But really, I think just asking any of our lecturers, any of the faculty and physicians that we interact with here, they all are able to give you some insight on how they chose their path in medicine, and then what might be of interest to you.
For sure, I definitely think a lot of lecturers and module leaders are very open about their experiences, and it's a lot, less formal than it would be if you were in high school or undergrad trying to reach out to these people. There's less paperwork for sure. But yeah, just sending a simple email to try and set up a meeting with them one-on-one can be really helpful, because there'll be no distractions. You can really focus on the questions you want to ask them that you might be afraid to in a public setting during lecture. But that's definitely a valuable resource to reach out to them.
Yeah. There's also lots of opportunities to shadow in medical school. Josh, do you have any stories about that you could share?
Oh, for sure. I've actually started shadowing pretty early on, because believe it or not everyone enters medical school knowing exactly what they want to do. So I actually was able to reach out. Once you get your school assigned email, it's very easy to type in the name of a professor or attending that you see on the website, and their name will pop up in the email list. You send a kindly worded email asking what their availability is, and more often than not, they'll be more than happy to take you on. You can shadow them in clinic or in the operating room if you're interested in that. So I feel like I got to see a lot of cool stuff pretty early on, even though I had no idea what was going on.
Yeah, I remember during my first year, I got to shadow OB-GYN on the labor and delivery ward, and I got to see a baby be born. And honestly, that was one of the craziest things I think I've seen in my life. But it's amazing that in our first year, we're able to have those sorts of exposures.
Yeah, absolutely. I also did the OB-GYN shadowing as well. I'm glad I did it early on, because I've heard stories that once people see it for the first time in their third year, it's possible to faint, but as long as you get these exposures early on, you can at least oh, maybe this is for me. But at least in my case, OB-GYN is not for me. But it was still really amazing to see the birth of human life.
Yeah. And then another way is through match panels. So Josh, did you check out any of those?
Yeah, so interest groups at medical schools often host match panels. They typically get a few fourth-year students that just recently matched. So you're hearing it fresh and just the truth from students who literally went through the process, that were just in our shoes a few years ago. But that's where it's a very informal setting where you can ask them the questions that you want to. They'll tell you about their experience. And actually the class that just went through had all of their interviews virtually. So for us going through a virtual curriculum ourselves, we were really interested in how that went for them. But a lot of them did match. They did pretty well this year as well.
Yeah, and it's a great way to hear from the students about what sort of things they explored and got involved with during medical school to prepare them for whatever field they decided to go into. Okay, last on the docket is our reflections about living in the city of Chicago. So I can say personally, I think Chicago is an amazingly beautiful city. Yes, the Lake Michigan, the Riverwalk, Chicago River running through. It's so beautiful, and there's so many unique pockets to explore, and I really enjoyed living here.
Yeah, I can definitely agree with that. There's also just so many different types of, even just the architecture varies just within a half mile. So the area that most students live in, which is about a half mile from the school, pretty urban, a lot of beach access, but not a lot of greenery. But if you just go a half mile north to Lincoln Park, there's a lot of greenery there. There's a zoo even. There's a biking trail that goes, I think it's like 11 miles all the way to the undergrad campus as well. So that's really great just to get out there. Lots of nature outside of the immediate hospital or medical area of Chicago.
And yeah, some of the little cultural areas to explore are places like Devon, which is sort of a South Asian district. It's actually along Devon Street north of us here. And they have terrific food. They give some great haircuts there at great prices. And
another one is actually Argyle stop on the Chicago Red Line. That's where Chinatown's located, as well as other East Asian cuisine. Also great food, good desserts and bakeries as well. And it's just a really different kind of scene from the rest of the city as well.
Yeah. There's lots of stops along the Red Line. Argyle, Chinatown.
And if you're a big sports fan, you can always go to Wrigleyville, which is where the Cubs stadium is if you're a big baseball fan. And just that, there's like a whole street of just bars to go to. A lot of them involve actually batting cages in them, which is really cool. There's parks there as well. And there's others like universities there as well. So it's very much like a sport and kind of college-centered little haven within Chicago, which is really nice.
Yeah. And something that I really enjoyed and was surprised about was all the beaches in Chicago. We think of it as a metropolitan city, but it's actually sort of a beach town. Great for playing volleyball, spike ball, and just hanging out on the beach.
Yeah, it's definitely something really popular with our classmates. There's definitely a volleyball group. We played spike ball actually a few times as well on the beach. It's just really amazing how much coastline's available to us, and Lake Michigan's actually viewable from this building we're in. So it's a lot of great open water to get access to.
Yeah. All right, that wraps up our reflection. Thanks for being here, Josh. It was a lot of fun having this conversation with you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Anytime.
Yeah. And everyone, make sure to check out Josh's channel. It's called Jives with Josh, linked in the description below. He has some great content on there, and you want to make sure to check it out.
Yeah, thanks, Nathan. Thanks so much, Nathan.
Yeah. All right, take care, everyone, and I will see you in the next one.